Hi everyone, welcome back to TaraChessAcademy. Today we'll be looking at a game played in the 1921 World Championships between Lasker and Capablanca. So the game began with d4, d5, c4, and e6. So this is the Queen's Gambit declined. So here Black can play c6 also. Black can accept it, although it would be giving White a strong center here. So Capablanca plays e6, strengthening d5, knight c3, knight f6, all normal developing moves. And now Lasker plays his bishop to g5. I think that's to kind of pressure this knight on f6. And these types of openings were played a lot in those days. So bishop e7, e3, castles, knight f3, knight db7, queen c2, and now Black strikes it in the center with c5. So there's a lot of center tension here, but you don't want to release the tension too early. So like over here, it wouldn't be a good idea to for White to take like this, because Black can play knight d5 and free up the pieces, or even e d5, which is more solid. So c5, rook d1, now queen a5, and he's developing his queen, and bishop d3, h6, kicking away this bishop on g5, bishop h4, cd4, ed4, dc4, bishop c4, knight b6, attacking the bishop, bishop b3, and now bishop d7 and castles. So now the development is complete. So where do we stand now? White has this isolated queen pawn, but Black's pieces are not really in the best places. So rook a8, knight e5, bishop b5, attacking the rook, and you don't want to take because then you lose your queen. So rook fe1, knight bd5, and now with these exchanges, it helps Black here because these pieces weren't really that good before. Now bishop d5, knight d5 is forced, because if you go e d5, then knight g4 can come, and it's not very good, and you want to trade pieces anyways. So knight d5 is the idea you have in mind when you play this. And now to bishop e7, knight e7, queen b3, the bishop drops back, knight c6. Now he goes bc6, protecting this pawn here. So if rook c6, queen b7 was a move, but so he just saves his pawn. Rook e5, attacking the queen. Now queen b6, queen c2, rook f d8. Both rooks are in the center here. So knight e2. White wants to get a good defensive position, but instead he should have played knight a4 and attacking the queen, and after some move like queen c7, rook c5, which is more active. So he played knight e2. Now rook d5. Now the c file is open. So this d pawn is actually very weak, and the a pawn isn't weak because there's no way for White to attack it here. So queen d2, knight f5, b3, just to maybe allow the queen to have mobility. And also it could stop like rook c4, like say rook b1, rook c4 could come. So b3, h5 to prevent g4, and it also gains some space. So it prepares for some kingside expansion later on in the game. Now white plays h3. White eventually wants to play g4. So h4, and this controls white's kingside pretty much. So, and if white eventually plays g4 at some point, as we'll see in the game, it'll weaken his position. So queen d3, rook c6, king f1, g6, just supporting the knight again, queen b1, and now queen b4. So here the queen is just pressuring, and it's not really like attacking anything immediate, but it's just sneaking into the position. The king just goes to g1, and now e5 is played, queen b2, and e4, and black wants to exchange this pawn and leave white with this weak pawn here. So queen d2, queen d2, rook d2, ab3, ab3. So if we look at this position, we can see that black is already better because there's this weak b pawn, and this pawn kind of controls these pawns here, and the pieces are more active. So rook b6, attacking this pawn on b3, so forcing rook d3, and now this rook has to defend d4 and b3, so just rook a6. The rook is now planning to come to a2 on, and where will be very strong. So g4 takes, and you can see how it slightly weakens the structure here. Now rook a2, knight c3, rook c2. The rook has come to the second rank, and already white is probably losing here. So Lasker played knight d1, and even if knight a4 is played, there's nothing that white can really do. Black can just go with slow play like king g7, king f6, king g5, or even here g5 or maybe knight d6. So he goes knight d1, and this kind of covers the c from c1 here. So knight e7, knight e3, attacking the rook, rook c1, king f2, knight c6, knight d1, now he goes rook b1, king e2. So white didn't have any good way to protect this pawn, so he just gave it up. King e2, rook b3. Now if rook b3, the knight will come to d4, forking the king and the rook. So king e3, rook b4, knight c3, knight e7. He just reroutes his knight. g5, knight d6, knight e4, rook b1, king g2, rook b2, rook f2, king e1, rook a2, king f1, king g7. You can see how he's slowly grinding the position. Rook e3, king g6, rook d3, f6, rook e3, king f7, rook d3, king e7. He's activating the king. And now it's supporting e5, king d6, rook d3, rook f2, king e1, rook g2, king f1, rook a2, rook e3, Now he strikes with e5, rook d3. If knight e2, knight d2 would be played, and after king f2, the knight can come to e4 and the rook can come to d2. So there's no real good way to defend this here. So rook d3, d4, rook d4, king c5, rook d1, d4, rook c1, and king d5. So here, Lasker resigned, as this d pawn is going to promote eventually, and he'll have to give up his knight for it. So this is one of his best games of this match, and it took away Lasker's chances of winning the match. So I hope you like that game. Thanks for watching. Bye.